Hi everyone, my name is Monica, and our project is based on the Erikson theory of psychosocial development. This theory explains how relationships and social surroundings affect our psychosocial development in 8 different stages. Although there are 8, we will only be focusing on the first 5. The stages are typically based on one's age and development. For example, stage 1 is typically for infants, while stage 8 is typically for adulthood. So within each stage, there's always a crisis that needs to be overcome in order to help one accomplish the next stage's challenge and so forth. This theory follows an epigenic principle that the stages build on each other and are progressive. With that being said, if an individual doesn't overcome a stage's crisis within the age and developmental time, they may experience difficulties with the later stage crises. For instance, if one cannot overcome the crisis in stage 1 of feeling trust in the world, then they may find it harder to form relationships in stage 6, where the main focus is to build and have those healthy, intimate relationships. Each of these stages has a battle between two opposite ideas, one of them being positive and the other negative. This is important because unlike Freud, I think, Erikson believed that these stages are throughout one's lifetime rather than the stages stopping at a certain age. A big idea from Erikson was that he believed that we are very conscious of what we want to accomplish, and our brain knows what we want and is constantly trying to find solutions to achieve that goal in some way. This ideology emphasizes that the ego actually plays a much bigger role than the id because we make conscious decisions throughout life to meet some sort of standard set by either society, those around you, or even your culture, rather than purely just based on your biological needs.
My name's Jesus, and I'll be talking about the first stage of Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory, trust versus mistrust, which happens from birth to about 1 year old. This is the phase of care relationship between caregivers and baby. Babies are obviously unable to take care of themselves. They are completely dependent on others for comfort, feeding, and protection. If the baby is comforted, they will begin to realize that the world is safe, and this builds trust, and the baby gains a foundation sense of hope that their needs will be met. As an example, picture a baby awaking in the middle of the night crying. If their parent reliably comes in, picks him up, and calms him, the baby starts to pick up, okay, when I need attention, someone is going to come. But if the opposite happens, what if cries of baby are ignored, where the world is unstructured and unsafe? Then the baby will begin to build mistrust. This can lead to an enduring fear of trusting others, which Erikson called withdrawal. Such an example can be a child who grew up in foster homes, changing houses every other day, and never having a single person that they could count on. As adults, they can end up failing to build stronger relationships since at an early age they comprehended that human beings are not dependable. This stage connects that Freud's oral stage, yet while Freud focused on sustenance, Erikson focused on safety from feelings, since studies have shown unprocessed mistrust may return in the later part of life, specifically following trauma. Therefore, in a sense, what happens during the first year, even before we can speak, may set up the way we understand the world from the rest of our lives.
Hello, I'm Tiffany, and I'll be talking about the second stage, autonomy versus shame and doubt, that occurs in toddlers ages 1 to 3 years old. Autonomy versus shame and doubt focuses on a child's developing sense of independence and self control versus feeling inadequacy and self doubt. The toddlers begin developing independence as early as walking, talking, toileting, and making small choices. Children during this stage enjoy the feeling of making choices their caregivers do for them on an everyday basis. It gives them willpower. When children develop willpower, they have the confidence to act independently. When caregivers encourage safe exploration, kids develop autonomy, but when children feel like their caregiver are being too harsh or over controlling, the child will feel it and may start doubting their abilities within themselves. Children also in this stage tend to fear failure because they are so hyper independent. They fear of failing themselves because they have high expectations. Certain culture expect obedience and independence, which means shame is often regarded negatively in Western cultures, while it can be viewed positively in collectivistic cultures.
Hello everyone, my name is Ansal Aga, and today I'll be covering stage 3 of the Erikson theory, which is initiative versus guilt. And it takes place around ages 3 to 5, so the preschool age when kids start figuring things out on their own and kind of really want to lead and create things. They also ask a lot of why questions. Why? And I love it when they do. At this age, kids began taking initiative, not because somebody is telling them to, but because they want to. They're exploring, they're becoming creative, they're creating their own sense of self. You'll see them asking tons of questions, trying to help, making up stories, or even creating pretend games. If they are supported in doing that, if they are given the good job, keep on trying, I'm so proud of you, even if they mess up a little or a lot, they develop a sense of purpose, a sense of I'm needed, I'm loved, I'm allowed to make mistakes, I matter, which is the virtue tied to this stage. The purpose becomes a core part of their confidence for the rest of their entire life. But when kids are constantly shut down, dismissed, and they're made to feel like you're too much, you're doing this wrong, if they are constantly criticized in that age, to be honest, it's either make it and break it. That's when the guilt starts to take over. And it's not just the regular kind of guilt, it's the kind of guilt that makes them feel like their ideas and their voice isn't worth much. It makes them feel like they are not the most precious thing in the world, which they are. And that could follow them for the rest of their lives. I actually have a personal story that I always come back to when I'm thinking about this stage. When I was either 3 or 4, my dad's car broke down. And in my head, I was fully convinced that I can fix it better than the mechanic could. And what my parents did, especially my dad, instead of brushing me off and putting me aside and going like, you can't do that, you're not capable, you're just a kid, they didn't do any of that. Instead, he gave me a little tool and he allowed me to tap magically on the main motor in the car. And I was just screaming, turn it on, turn it on. They even got me a little stool. And he did. He tried, he listened to me, he let me do my thing. He took it to the mechanic later, but without breaking my shine, without taking away that brightness. And he made me believe that I was magically fixing it. I was so proud of myself in that moment, and it gave me a sense of capability, a sense of who I am, a sense of if I can do this, I can do anything. My parents believe in me, so I will too. They didn't just let me pretend, they made me feel useful, and that stayed with me. That moment, along with so many others, it helped shape the kind of person I've grown to be. And I hope that we can all help our kids grow to be somebody who believes in themselves. And that's the real heart of this stage. Kids want to try, they want to lead. And how adults around them respond determines whether they move forward with confidence or start holding back themselves and trying to hide pieces of themselves that they should only embrace. Culturally, initiative can look different. Some kids are taught to speak up while others are taught to stay quiet. But in all cases, there needs to be space to try. There needs to be space for them to believe in themselves. And for them to know that making a mistake doesn't make you worthless, it makes you human. And that's how we learn. And that's the beauty of this stage, is that we can encourage our kids to become a beautiful future, something that embraces the light in them constantly.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I'll be talking about stage 4, which is industry versus inferiority. Kids the age of 6 to 11 years old. In school, these age kids need to achieve in and be recognized for things like grades, sports, art, chores, and more. You name it. This builds industry, or gives them competence in which is the belief in one's ability to succeed at tasks. An example of that is using positive language and encouragement to motivate children to learn and grow. Repeated failure and negative feedback causes inferiority, or inertia, which is the lack of interest or unwilling to make an effort to do anything. This happens especially when kids compare themselves to peers or are not recognized for positive actions, leading towards unwillingness to make an effort or feeling lesser than their peers. Schools and parents are the key. A child needs consistent praise, realistic expectations, and positive social comparison. Because gender, race, and culture have a big influence in what achievement looks like. For example, a study found that elementary school students assigned to ineffective teachers for 3 years score significantly lower on achievement tests than those assigned to highly effective teachers, with minority students being less likely to be assigned to the more effective teachers.
Hello, my name is Shannon, and I'll be talking about stage 5, which is 12 to 18 years old, in Erikson's theory. Erikson said it's a major stage of development where the child has to learn the rules he will copy as an adult. Fidelity is when teens are able to commit oneself to others on the basis of accepting others, even when they may be ideological. Teens go through different stages, such as different personalities, to see which one suits them best. They start to ask themselves, who am I? And then start to distance themselves from parents and pull away to explore themselves. As they pull away from their parents, other things become more important to them. For an example, social media, famous people, they start looking up to them more and basically move away from reality. Warm and healthy parent-child relationships have been associated with positive outcomes for adolescents, such as better grades and fewer school behavior problems, in the United States as well as in other countries. They say kids that have better relationships with their parents do come out more responsible, because they do have that parent to go ahead and lead them to the right path. Which teens don't resolve a crisis successfully, they have a harder time to deal with future crises. For example, they'll start not to want to confront things in life as a teen. They start to get scared of life problems because of that one life problem. Other hormones are starting to get them scared, bringing anxiety, depression, and all that.
Hello, I'm Yuridia, and I'll be talking about the cultural and social context in Erikson's theory. So, Erikson said that the people who are around us and what people expect from us are what prompts us to do what we do. So, in other words, people know exactly what they're doing because he didn't believe in anyone having conscious urges. He believed that development is universal, so that people's personalities were constantly changing due to personal events and experiences that happen in one's life. This meant that each of his psychosocial stages played out differently depending on everyone's culture, family, and history. We could look at the autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, for example. as the stage focuses on being able to be independent and starting to make our own decisions. This can be seen more in individualist cultures that promote independence, self-resilience, and personal goals, rather than the collectivist cultures that prefer being interdependent and who like doing things together and in groups. In an article, we see that Tina mentioned how cultural expectations shape a child's development. So, children from different races receive different social feedback and support than those that come from white families. And although his stages are technically listed by age, it's possible that one's experience as an adult can reactivate earlier stages. For example, if someone is betrayed by a family member or by a significant other, they may go back to that trust versus mistrust stage that's usually caused during infancy, where they need to feel that their needs are met before they can throw themselves back out at the world.
Hello everyone, my name is Saleh Agha and I'll be covering the critiques, flexibility, and the modern use of the Erikson's theory. One of the biggest critiques is that the Erikson's stages and or theory are too linear. The theory assumes that people move through each stage in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and never go back and visit older stages. Like, you complete one, move on to the next one, but life isn't that simple, according to Stat Pearls and other modern psychologists. People often revisit earlier stages later in life, especially during times of trauma, loss, major transitions in life. So development is much more flexible than Erikson originally described it. Another critique is that Erikson's theory reflects a very Western point of view, especially around ideas like independence and forming a strong individual identity. And while that is valid for many people, it doesn't reflect every culture. In a lot of communities, including mine, I'm Iraqi, Arab, there is a real balance between developing your sense of self and always knowing that you have family as your backbone. Growing up, independence was encouraged, but we were never expected to do it all on our own. We were raised to rely on each other when things got hard. And to me, that's just as valuable. I think that the beauty in cultural differences is that even though success may look different in every culture, the goal is still the same: to grow, to feel supported, and to know that you belong somewhere, and to be the best version of yourself. Even with its flaws, the Erikson's theory is still everywhere. It is used in therapy, education, parenting, basically anywhere that people are trying to understand emotional and social growth. It's broad and it gives basically languages to things people feel but can't really explain, and that's beautiful. There are also tools like the Erikson Psychosocial Stage Inventory, basically the EPSI, and the MEPSI. And those are actually used in mental health to help professionals understand where somebody is in their development or where they may be stuck. And that shows us that it's not just a theory, it's still being applied. And honestly, what makes Erikson so respected is that he didn't just look at childhood. He looked at the entire lifespan and how the mind, culture, body all work together. And that's why his theory still holds weight, because it reminds us that development never stops, and none of us grow in a vacuum. Thank you.